Let's go to the Heister Automotive Group hotline. Say hello to Ryan Wilson, Pick Six Podcast. Hi, Ryan. How are you?
Good afternoon, guys. When you said 5 stars, I thought you were going to say me, but I guess
hey, you're a 5-star guest, and we appreciate that. The Eagles are no longer 5 stars. They're no longer the perfect best thing you can have after they lost to Washington last night. But I feel like we're in peak buy or sell mode. I'm not selling the Eagles just because they lost last. They're going to lose at some point. And credit to Washington for having a really good game plan. Run the ball, run a bunch of plays, keep it out of their offense, win that middle 8. I don't know if a lot of teams can replicate that, so I'm not selling on the Eagles just yet.
No, I think that's right. And it felt like a confluence of events. There were 3 turnovers by the Eagles. The one, A.J. Brown appeared to catch the ball, and then gravity-defying interception came off of that on that, what was a perfect throw by Jalen Hurts. There was also the Quez Watkins fumble after he caught another great pass from Jalen Hurts. And then there was the Dallas Goedert fumble that was preceded by a face mask that somehow got missed. So if you're banking on that every single week, then maybe you have a chance to beat the Eagles the way Washington did, but I do think there's something to run in the football. Jordan Davis wasn't there, the first-round pick, who's enormous, and that sort of opened things up on the inside. It was almost 2-1 in terms of plays run by Washington compared to Philadelphia on offense. And you would imagine by the end of that game, after tackling Brian Robinson for 45 minutes, the Eagles' defense got tired. I think you're right, too. It sounds sort of hokey, but I think there is something for a young football team, especially to lose a game early on before it gets too deep into the proceedings. You know what it's like. You deal with the failure. You come back the next week and you sort it all out. And then once you get to the playoffs, you're ready to go. So, yeah, there was not going to be any undefeated teams. The loss is not great, but it's not great in the same way that the Cowboys losing to the Packers wasn't great. I don't think that's any huge indictment on how the rest of the season looks for either of those teams.
Allow me to be the bad guy here. What exactly is on the Eagles' resume that we are so excited about them? Because if they feel like Michigan football to me, they keep beating a bunch of crappy teams. And I get it. The NFL is not the Big Ten. But we would look through it here, Ryan. What do we got? They beat Minnesota. That was good. I mean, yeah. But the rest of this stuff, this is just them tying their shoes, isn't it?
And the caveat is to that Minnesota game, it was a primetime game, and we know that Kirk Cousins doesn't play well in primetime
You got to play 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins. That's
right.
who you got to get.
You got to get 1 p.m. Kirk, preferably on the East Coast. The 1 p.m. starts, the noon starts don't work for him in the Midwest. But the issue is this: when you look at the rest of their schedule, the Eagles, it's not tough.
No, it's not.
So we may not find out until January just how good they are. For me, the biggest selling point, because in August the conversation was this: this team will be good if Jalen Hurts shows up. Jalen Hurts has showed up each and every week. They didn't lose because of Jalen Hurts. Yesterday. They lost because of the defense and then some untimely mistakes with the turnovers. So I think if Jalen Hurts continues to do the things he's done, they'll be fine. Now, granted, they haven't been tested, and we'll find out what that looks like at the same time, probably in January. And I'm assuming they lose a game or two between here and then. That said, I can only go on what we've seen. What we've seen have been some pretty dominating performances. Typically, you want to beat bad teams pretty soundly, and they've done that certainly throughout a couple of these games. But you could say, look, they struggled to beat the Texans 2 weeks ago. That's true. The Texans leaned on Dameon Pierce. They struggled to beat Washington. And we talked about the running game there with Brian Robinson. So we'll see if Jonathan Taylor gets a huge workload. I'm guessing he will in this next game, and then how it sort of pans out after that.
Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports, Pick Six Podcast, joining us here on the OG alongside Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovias. It's funny you mentioned that about Jalen Hurts. He's been productive, and that's why I'm also buying on the Miami Dolphins right now. With Tua Tagovailoa healthy, we see the numbers they're putting up. People might want to point out, well, yeah, it's easy to do when you got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but no, he statistically has been good too. And the Dolphins went all in, trying to get better too, bringing on Bradley Chubb, and they're now sitting atop the AFC East. This is not so much about the Bills and Josh Allen losing to Kirk Cousins and the crew. To me, this is just about the Dolphins being good. Are you also buying the Dolphins as they are?
Yeah, and you make the point about people saying, well, he has Tyreek. That's the point. That's
right.
how it works.
Like, don't knock it, man.
Josh Allen has who? Josh Allen's career started taking off with Stephon Diggs got there. Maybe that's coincidence. It didn't hurt. Justin Jefferson turns out he's pretty good for Kirk Cousins' career. So you can go around the league and point to guys that have elevated the play of their teammates, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is an example of that. And by the way, Trent Sherfield, the number 3 receiver, has had a rising tides lifts all boats situation as well. He's been targeted a lot and benefited from the rest of the playmakers around him, allowing him to get the football. And Tua is playing out of his mind. There was a whole concussion thing that we talked about early in the season, and that's another conversation. And it feels like the NFL has got their hands around that. But when Tua's healthy and he starts and finishes games, the Dolphins are undefeated. and they don't have a necessarily super tough schedule. Actually, they have tough games. They have at San Francisco, at Chargers, at Bills. So they'll get tested.
See, that's where I push back, because they did beat the Bills. Now, if you want to make the argument that they beat the Bills when it was super hot and the Bills don't know how to handle that, wake me up when they go to Buffalo and see how that's handled. I'm with you. But they also beat the Ravens in a pretty dramatic fashion. And now we've got some true I feel like the Dolphins are they're a better version of how we talk about the Eagles. They have played people. They do have a difficult schedule coming up, and they've proven it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And their schedule is considerably tougher as I look through it. Now, I do want to see what happens, and you sort of touched on this, when they go to Buffalo in Week 15, and then 2 weeks later they go to New England. How do they handle the cold weather? Good news is running games and defense travel. Tua may be less relied upon in those situations if the weather isn't great. But I think Mike McDaniel is the right coach because he understands we can't just throw the ball 60 times because we have Tyreek and Jalen. We have to use these running backs. I thought getting Jeff Wilson is going to be one of those under-the-radar trade deadline moves that ends up really paying off because turns out he's a good football player, and I think that makes Tua's life eminently easier. You touched on Bradley Chubb. I think that's going to be sort of the biggest second half of the season takeaway. How much does this defense improve? Because they've struggled at times for various reasons, and if Bradley Chubb can get after it as an edge rusher, that'll solve some problems too.
Ryan Wilson, Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports, joining us here in the Heister Automotive Group hotline. That's Joe Ovius. I'm Joe Giglio. All right, Ryan, you mentioned the next opponent for the Eagles is the Indianapolis Colts and Jeff Saturday. What did you make of analyst turned head coach Jeff Saturday's winning debut?
I said it before the game. I said, there's no way Josh McDaniels should keep his job if he can't beat a guy whose only coaching experience is going 20-16 at a small high school. Here we are. Mark Davis has given Josh McDaniels the vote of approval going forward.
Yeah.
So, but here's what I'll say. Like, I love this story just as an outsider because it's so something we never see in the NFL, and there's so much drama. It's a literally reality show starring Jim Irsay. But here's what I'll say, and I make this comment all the time on Black Friday or whatever the day is when all the coaches get fired. All these hot offensive defensive coordinators that get promoted for doing such great jobs dialing up plays, they're going into a job that is completely different from what made them so successful. Josh McDaniels is a perfect example of that. We see it around the league where these coaches get elevated, continue to do the play calling duties, Nathaniel Hackett, for example, and they struggle because it's a different job requirement. And I think maybe what Jeff Saturday brings, that dude didn't even need to wear a headset on Sunday. He was just being the cheerleader. He was making the tough calls when they needed on 4th down or when to punt or whatever. And he let his coordinators coordinate. And sometimes I think we overcomplicate football. And I think Jeff Saturday, who by all accounts is a great guy and a great leader, and maybe that's all you need to help turn this thing around in Indianapolis, at least in terms of them being competitive. And maybe that's a lesson to the rest of the league that you don't have to complicate something that is pretty simple. So I love that. Now, look, we'll see how this unfolds. They could lose 40-0 this week, and then we're all like, why'd they make the hire? But it's fun to watch in the meantime.
Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports, Pick Six Podcast. We appreciate the time as always. Look, man, I said yesterday, Jeff Saturday lived the dream. I mean, we say all the time, this team's not good. I mean, he tweeted it out, Raiders are horrible. And the dude goes out there. If he walked off after that, would you blame him? Like, I don't need to coach another game. I said this team was horrible. I proved my point. I'm walking off. Is that not legendary status? We'd all love to have that happen.
Absolutely. That's like a Rudy Rudiger story, but better because he got a chance to play in the league, win a Super Bowl, and then he just came out of left field, almost literally coached the team and just kept walking as the game ended.
Unreal.
And said, peace out. No, it's a great story.
All right. We appreciate it, Ryan. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, guys.